Hola a todos, bienvenido. Welcome all to the first exhibition for this year at Gallery at QI. And I am particularly excited about the gestures and the potential for the gestures that the artist Chico MacMurtrie has brought and teleported via a long haul, literally, to get here. I would like to thank all of QI, all the different elements that have always come together to support us, from Ramesh Rao, and I don't know, Hector. It's a lot of different community. And alongside this, we have a new coordinator for the gallery, Casey Polachek, who was dropped into this amazing project, how do you assemble all these things together, and also an MFA from the Department of Visual Arts. So thank you, Casey, for working on all of this. Tonight, I'll just do a little bit of a presentation, and then I'll invite Chico, and we'll have about a 26-minute film on this new projector that just came in, so that is really fantastic. Also, I'd like to dedicate this exhibition and the year. Next exhibition will be Mehmet Atkin, professor here in the Department of Visual Arts, who does AI art and other practices. And he just sent me an email that he's commissioned by the Venice Biennale this year. So that will be really nice. That's the next exhibition. But I like to dedicate this to somebody who took care of us for such a long time, 15 years, artist Trish Stone, and also dedicated to our longtime colleague and member of the committee for Gallery at QI, Michael Trujillo. We send all our love and care to them as they're going through a long haul themselves. So all of this is in remembrance of the power that they always bring to us, and we look forward to them bringing even more. So border crossers, amorphic robot works, Chico MacMurtrie. Just a brief kind of condition, where did robots come from? What do they mean? What's the etymology of things? Mechanical person, 1923, person whose work or activities are entirely mechanical, from the English translation of the 1920 play R.U.R., Rossum's Universal Robots by Karl Kopek, a Czech robotnik, forced worker, from robota, forced labor, compulsory service, drudgery, from robotiti, to work drudge, from an Old Czech source akin to Old Church Slavonic, robota, servitude, from robo, slave, from Old Slavic orbu, pass from one status to another, see orphan. So it came from performance, it came from a play. And in the play, one of the quotes by the inventor of these robots is, "My dear Miss Glory, the robots are not people. Mechanically, they are more perfect than we are. They have an enormously developed intelligence, but they have no soul." Here's a copy of Karl Kopek's Rossum's Universal Robots, a play. Here's some scenes from that original performance. Of course, the robots revolt and resist. Another scene here. And this robot became part of the culture of the 1920s, probably most famous, Metropolis by Fritz Lang, 1927. And I'll just pop quickly to 1977, again, a direct copy of Metropolis robot, R2-D2. There were many detours. There was Roby the Robot that I grew up with, Isaac Asimov's iRobot, famous more human form, the Terminator. So this history of robots, often without a soul, driven and enslaved to labor, to work directly for us, and they often resist and contest. Another element that's important, I think, in the work that's being considered, say, the border crossers, is the history of border art. Border art might begin with Richard Liu's project, the Border Door, I think 1988, and it's indicative of what a great deal of border art is about. That is the flow of humans, an opening of doors, the creation of bridges, of a flow of community. Philosopher Thomas Nail, in his book on immigration and ontology, says that movement is first cause, and anything that blocks movement blocks humanity. And that is the kenopolitics of flow. And so border art is often opening the door, offering different formations of flow. A Trojan horse by R. Maybe you can shoot yourself over the border. Create KEDs that can give you access to a jump or brinco of the border. Border drones, lowrider drones. 2005, a lot of these. The Transporter Immigrant Tool by Electronic Disturbance Theater. All of these are about offering community of to those in movement. Refugees, immigrants, those wandering in the desert, trying to crisscross the wall, the barrier, the border, which we know is almost everywhere. Globalization is borderization. Which brings us to border art robots. It's part of the power of Chico MacMurtrie's work that brings breath and soul back into these soulless robots, if you will, brings pneuma, the pneumatic, the nature of breath, the amorphic, that which has not crystallized into form fully as part of a powerful aesthetic, and the machinic as well. Since the late 1980s, Chico MacMurtrie has explored the intersection of robotic sculpture, new media installation, and performance. MacMurtrie's work investigates organic life from deep within, finding geometry in all living systems. Chico MacMurtrie and his interdisciplinary collective, Amorphic Robot Works, ARW, have received numerous awards for their experimental new media artworks, including 5 grants from the National Endowment for the Arts, the Andy Warhol Foundation grant, the Rockefeller Foundation Fellowship, Vida Life 11.0, and Prix Ars Electronica, one of the most important of the awards that can be given to new media work, and the MAP Fund grant from in 2019. MacMurtrie/ARW works have been presented in major museums and cultural institutions around the world, including the National Art Museum of China, Beijing Hayward Gallery, London, Museo de la Reina Sofía, Madrid, Cité de Sciences et d'Industrie, Paris, Museo Universitario de Arte Contemporáneo, MOAC, Mexico City, Pioneer Works, Brooklyn, New York, Shanghai Biennial, Tri-Postal Lily Retrospective Exhibition, Moftafek Works, Munich, Pneuma World, Dog Ghana, Rome, and ZHI Art Museum, Chengdu. It's a great pleasure. Welcome, Chico. Do you want to say anything before we start the video?
I think we should just show the video. And then
Just show the video? Okay. Please present the video. Thanks.
My border crossers inhabit a world I am still dreaming of. A world of fluid boundaries between countries and cultures, and between humans and machines. My border crossers, at once strange and familiar machines that evoke human aspirations, serve as unconscious guides to this misunderstood landscape. They represent interactions between humans and machines that differ radically from military hardware. Here, the art of robotics becomes peaceful, and the machine bodies themselves soft and vulnerable, structured by the most ephemeral element: air.
En el municipio de Guerrero.
Uno más que toca tambores. Pásale.
De mi cabeza no sale y no lo digo por
La que está ahí, yo digo, creo que esa mañana va a estar todo aquí. Lento aquí. Ahí vas bien, güey.
¡Suerte!
This is the first time you've seen it on this scale of a screen, as far as I know.
That's right. Yeah. Especially this is sort of the final edit, I think.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I really appreciate that work. I guess I would like to ask, where did the gesture emerge, the impulse to make these kind of dancing, soulful entities? What other than having done a number of amorphic robots, these specifically, the border crossers?
It's a super interesting and intriguing evolution. Having grown up on the border was part of the influence, because I just saw the need to sort of speak out on that issue on one level, and I had been building these large-scale inflatable architectural structures, and what I realized as I began to evolve that process of building these things, I saw the possibility of scale as one thing that was available. And so the border wall itself being supposedly this scale that's supposed to stop humans from passing through it, I started to think about the spirit of the people who were here in the American side before it was divided into Mexico and America. And I just sort of always thought that it's really one people. And I was interested in developing something that commented on that, on the sort of gesture of freedom and equality. And so needless to say, it was a challenge. And so I pitched the idea several times, and people came forward and participated in helping me realize it. So it was a 6-year process. And so part of the reason I'm here is to continue the process, and perhaps it becomes a second chapter of the film. But since I began the process, the walls were 18.5 tall walls, and now they're 30-foot walls. And so at the end of the film, the two machines that were sort of engaging each other, those were built to take on the new walls, the 30-foot walls. And hopefully that's what we'll actually be able to occur.
No, I think that's the sense of the work presented is a choreography and a cartography of the different configurations of the border wall.
That's right.
And so to add the third scene, I think would be important in terms of the architecture. And having seen versions of the film, one of the things that comes to mind is not only does it have a sense of the entering into the spaces where this wall exists that divides territories and creates dance and music and encounter with communities as well on both sides, right? They literally dancing, making music, right? There's a rhythmic sensibility to the machines. But one of the things that I've noted, and my partner Amy Sarah, who's a scholar of border arts, there's also desire and erotics. And we often thought it has a kind of homoerotic sensibility. It's a kind of a very phallic system that emerges, and even while the dancing, everybody's dancing, it just kind of rises.
That's right.
So this kind of pneumatic desire.
That's right.
And there's an erotics there, which I think is quite interesting, whether unconsciously or directly. I don't know if you ever considered some of the kind of desire and eroticism in the work.
It seems to always be part of the work somehow, and maybe it's the nature of the swelling and growing aspect to pneumatics, to a volume being filled, a large, long volume being filled, let's say. So definitely, it's part of it, and I certainly can't deny it, and it's there. Very interesting point. The community aspect of it is super important. And the film was made up of a series of performances that took place in these locations. And the ones that were on the Chihuahua side were often in these sort of war-torn areas where a team of people took me and kept the situation safe and kept us away from danger. But the community, the people that you saw physically there, had never seen them and had no idea they were coming. So the audience engagement was very pure, and it was very spontaneous.
And what about the more reinforced side in the U.S.? What were the negotiations in getting? There's
a really great sort of current irony to the whole thing. And so I grew up on that border town of Naco, Arizona, Naco, Sonora. I went to school at the border school, in fact. And when I started making these huge inflatables in my backyard, it was across the highway from the Border Patrol local regional headquarters. And they basically were looking at what I was doing nonstop, helicopters, patrol vehicles coming around when these things started to grow really tall with the spotlights. And so they knew who I was. And so at one point, in an attempting to do it, I asked a retired pastor who had worked on the border a lot, if he could hook me up a meeting with the head of Border Patrol. It was as simple a question as that, and he hooked up this meeting, and at that point I recognized that the Border Patrol, they have to sort of allow a creative thing like this to happen, especially if it's been government sponsored, like the Guggenheim or what have you. So I met with them and I requested bluntly what I wanted to do, and to my surprise, they're like, well, how can we help you? So this was a very exciting and rare moment. And recognizing, of course, that it was the moment that Biden had taken office, and their policy at that moment, as opposed to yesterday, if everybody was reading about yesterday's policy, the policy was, let's open this border back up, let's stop this fabrication of the ridiculous Trump wall, and it allowed this window to happen. So, and so all of our attempts and the result of the film came from spending a year off and on in El Paso trying to do another gesture over the border there. And in fact, we kept getting denied for various reasons. So the hope now is having connected with you and Design Capital for 2024, we're hoping to perform the gesture here in Tijuana and San Diego.
Well, I think that's a really important part of sort of landing here.
Yeah.
And so the performative matrix, how do we assemble that, right, on both sides of the border? And that's why I was interested in these histories of border art that have been here. How do we negotiate that? And one of the elements, I think, is that you've started to work with some of the engineering community here.
That's right.
Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, so, and also in looking at the next chapter, what you'll all get to see is the beginning stages of a humanoid machine, or a series of humanoid machines that I ultimately envision, probably to Professor Tolley over here, his surprise, Mike Tolley from the engineering department who we're working with. I'm interested in this machine to literally transcend the border by just walking right through it. And in addition to the large machines, I'm conceiving that idea. Not at all practical by any means, but I'm trying to visualize that happening. And so if this soft machine walks up to the border and eases its way through the small slit, that's what I'm thinking about. So artists, they're inspired to do things, and often it leads to other things, but somehow these dual pneumas are going to be part of the second chapter of the film. And perhaps that the large border crosser picks one up and puts it over the other side. Perhaps it's that it makes its own way to the border. But that's what the show looks at. Working with David Vermillion from the Beale Center. David, are you here as well? Oh, there's David. Yeah, so he's invited me to do a show that sponsored by the Getty Initiative for next
on art and technology
this year. Yeah. And so, sort of in a very interesting way, our collaboration, as well as with Professor Mike Tolley from engineering, happened as a result of David interested in this, in me proposing something. So it's been growing slowly in that way, and there's a year before that exhibition at this point, and those border crossers will be here for the next 3 months. The new ones, the dual pneumas.
Yeah, that's well, one of the things, it's always hard for young artists and graduate students when I tell them it takes 10 years for me to do any work, from conceptual to practice to final manifestation and reflection. And often they go, well, that's too long, right?
Yeah.
It has to happen much quicker. Yeah. I want to open it up to the community if there's questions on the border crossers, the project. Obviously here for Chico, you're welcome to come up and ask some questions if you wish.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I didn't sit here so I could be first. Just happened to be.
Yeah, that's what you said.
Thank you so much for this. Really interesting. And what I really liked about the film is that it was not overdetermined by a lot of narration, and that we incited our curiosity about this thing, this apparatus, and what its purpose was. And the fact that you couldn't really tell what its purpose was really compelling. And the fact that we didn't have a kind of voiceover that conceptualized it and led us in a certain direction and wasn't oriented toward endowing this thing with a particular aim was really interesting, because that it was kind of you could feel the yearning in a sense, kind of to express itself in an environment, and to that sort of basic human impulse to extend oneself into the world and feel and connect. And so that allowing that resonance, that kind of affect and sensitivity to come into play. And also the lack of the soundtrack, kind of allowing the sort of tactility, the nuances of the movement, the crinkling, the sort of feeling, and kind of in correspondence with the machine was really, really compelling. And so by the time we got to the border, even though of course you could sort of say there was a ultimate aim for the apparatuses, even so, it wasn't necessarily so rooted in the particularity of that particular border. Mm-hmm. There was a kind of borderness, maybe that it was engaging with, that you could allow it to be more open-ended and not specifically geared for that instance, which I think was really, really interesting. And so I guess my question, if there's a question here, is that in working with engineers, could you speak about how you collaborate? Because I think it's really interesting when you're working with something that's very open-ended, it doesn't really have a particular purpose, but is kind of engaged in a certain kind of exploration that isn't necessarily geared for a specific effect. Or maybe an effect, but not something that does something that you can think as worth the effort. Mm-hmm. And so how do you structure a conversation? In the sense of working with engineers who also like to have a particular purpose for their work.
Right. Yeah. Well, thanks a lot for your comments. That was very fluid and thought out. I appreciate it. In the case of what Amorphic Robot Works is, it's an organization, a loose-knit organization of builders and artists and engineers who are interested in participating in something more organic, let's say, than a straightforward engineering challenge. So it's an engineering challenge often because I conceive the idea first, and my ideas are always impractical. Nothing practical about them whatsoever. So it's on one hand it's a real challenge, but then there's a lot of freedom on how to develop the piece and look at it. And that's exactly what's taking place in the gallery at the moment. Two of the students who are working in the Bioinspired engineering department maybe haven't seen anything like this before. Maybe there's some references, but most importantly, there's an opportunity to learn something really different than what you might have started to do in your normal trajectory of being an engineering student, let's say. So, David knows, actually me and David went to graduate school together, but he knew that part of his job was trying to find a way to connect me to somebody who could take on this challenge. And through this sort of evolution, we found out about Mike Tolley's lab here. And of course, I was surprised to find somebody who was doing something really similar to what I was doing, except it was sort of formal. It was very formal. It was a lab, and there's graduate students, and it was super neat to see that and to be able to come and communicate with students immediately. So that's very, very rare, David. Good job David. But it's been great working with Mike and his students, and they get what I'm after. They don't know why I'm doing it necessarily, but they get what I'm after. So that's
Well, I think that's an important border to cross between the kind of useless and the useful.
right.
And there is this kind of drift and blind probing that occurs that is perhaps an important kind of border to open in the process that I think your work certainly calls on.
That's right.
That is the deep mechanisms that allow this kind of aesthetic uselessness, but at the same time it drifts into very specific encounters and echoes around what we might imagine as occurring. And I think there's also child's play. You saw that with the children. You saw the young kids passing like an apple back and forth. And so I think that is always at play in your work, which I think is an important condition. One more question before we get to go and eat and see the exhibition.
Yeah. Anybody you can just yell out your question.
Okay.
No, well, you can use the speaker.
Or just
if you
use the
will.
microphone,
Okay.
yeah.
Sorry, I don't know if I'll fit. Okay. I just wanted to ask about that scene with the scene where with the drumming onto the machine, and I think that it was interesting because there was a moment of celebration and this otherness and this kind of alien object, and yet it's a kind of engineered object that is celebrated as a known to the landscape and the community. Yet there are also the engineered borders that are kind of also alien, and so I just wanted to ask you to speak more about that sort of celebratory devotional moment, and also that rejection of otherness in engineered spaces and objects.
Thanks. That's a great question. I imagined, well, a super important part of the film was engaging the communities in the first place and having them participate, and maybe through this machine empower them, empower this sort of need for this freedom, this need to be able to go to travel the world with freedom in a sense. And so these children that came and gathered around, it was an impromptu moment. I remember making a little drawing of these people descending on the border crosser and starting to drum on it, because naturally it's a very percussive device, being that it's rather taut and phallic, like a drum, right? I stumbled. I was the guy in the crutches in the film. If you notice that, I had dropped an anvil on my foot, and for the whole length of the like the cartoon, for the whole length of the filming, I was like hobbling around, and I tripped on a dry tree, and I got myself up, and I noticed I had broken several sticks, and I grabbed the sticks and I started handing the sticks to the children, and I'm like, come and drum, because I didn't know what was going to happen next necessarily, but I handed the sticks out, and they came and they started drumming. And one of the things about music, rhythm, machinery is that no matter how large the group might be, they always find a rhythm within themselves, right? And so these children sort of created that pulsing sound that you heard, and that's how that happened. And to me, I was like, the feeling I had at the moment was like it really, the machine was really empowered to continue on its journey, to like keep going forth, because it was their dreams, those children's dreams of crossing that border if they needed to, if they wanted to. So that's what I was thinking about. I don't know if I answered the second part of the question.
Well, it's almost as if that the alienness of the border crossers is not so much an alienness, but a robot with a soul. If the robot was originally defined in 1920 as soulless, here you had the robot with a soul, as opposed to the border wall, who's alien and soulless to a great degree. And so a different alien formation call for a rhythm, for a gathering, right? And I think that's what the border crossers do in a extraordinarily beautiful way. And so let's imagine that the performative metrics of the third scene, the third act, can happen here in what has been a traditional area for border art.
Yes.
And also a space in which that hardening, multiplicity of the walls have expanded here as well.
Right.
So I'll imagine that we're assembling all of this together as different communities. Hell, we even found where to put your truck.
Right.
That was a miracle. But anyway, I want to thank everybody for joining us. I want to thank Chico for creating this work. And I call on you to enjoy some food, some beverages of various sorts, and go visit the border crossers and the experiments, the pneumatic breath and soul of the work. I don't know if you can drum on it, but if you're called to it, we'll see. Yeah?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take care.
Yeah.